I thank you for the opportunity of gaining access to this recording. My name is Chiinji Martin, a PhD student in education management. I now present to you a paper entitled The Wonder and Logical Skepticism of Education in Uganda. This paper is a philosophical paper, and I major in the philosophy of education. While at Nkumba University, I'm doing research in existential system, forms of inquiry and perspectives of knowledge in Uganda. Allow me to tell you that this paper is not an original research paper, and you will understand why. But it is a providential paper, and it is a communique of the Ancient of Days. We will study this and appreciate why. Looking at the aspect of education from a philosophical standpoint, the philosophy of education plays as the foundation by which any economy, any society can develop. Therefore, Kraft, in his write-up of 1984, he noted that education comprises of two major Latin words. One is educare, which means train or to mold, and the second one is educere, which means lead out. Educare is about the preservation and passing down of acquired knowledge and practices of any society or individual, while educere regards preparing the society or for a new generation to meet the emerging changes. I have tried to look at the education system, curriculum, and syllabus, especially among academic institutions in Uganda. I realized that the education within Uganda is predominantly based on either arts or sciences. The wonder about the vastness of the framework of existence has led me to engage into this logical skepticism to establish if only empirical knowledge of arts and science is the only possible knowledge about existence. Therefore, I have dived into a critical review of the education curriculum, the syllabus, and academic subjects within Uganda. And what I have realized that all that is within the education curriculum is what is sensible because is verifiable and justifiable by physical senses. What am I saying? That whatever we are studying within Uganda is limited to that which makes sense to physical senses. This has given me the basis for the three questions that we are going to study together. Is existence only a physical possibility? Number two, is there another reality that is not physical? Therefore, if so, how do I know such truth and knowledge? As part of the study, owing to the scantiness of available literature about the forms of inquiry, this study is purely qualitative and it is exploratory based on desk review. I have done a systems analysis and critical review of the philosophy of Ubuntu and the theory of existentialism, and I have triangulated these with King Solomon of Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 4 to 7. This study is methodological. It is a taxonomical classification of the respective existential system components of the nature of existence. This part of study is introductory to the nature of existence, because the nature of existence will help us to earmark the scope of education. Therefore, this research is deductive as we explore the patterns of the nature of existence and thus come up with an existential system model. And the findings would help us to establish whether we in Uganda we are studying about existential knowledge or empirical knowledge. Looking at the very ancient past, I tried to do an infinite regress to establish the beginning of the beginnings. But I realized that the quest of knowledge, especially to establish own identity, has been going on across all civilizations. I am not the only one who is critiquing the education system and curriculum. But the education curriculum of Uganda is very important. In what way? Nicholas Grimmel also comments and says that the continent of Africa is the host of numerous ancient civilizations which formed the basis of the ancient Egyptian civilization as far back as 700,000 BC. It means this continent of Africa has been a host of numerous civilizations which ended up becoming the ancient Egyptian civilization. And based on that, the country Uganda is located within the continent of Africa. It has had several names. Originally, the African continent was considered as Eden. Then it was considered as Al-Keblan, means the mother of mankind, but also as the Garden of Eden. Also, Africa has been considered in some writings as Kemet, or the land of black people, or the land of Kush, or the land of Hamites. All these names basically show you the different nomenclatures which have been used in Africa. The civilizations prior to ancient Egyptian civilization were all from the interior of Eden. All these civilizations were in quest for knowledge. This is what gave the foundation of the ancient Egyptian civilization. So, when you are looking at the ancient Egyptian civilizations, I want you to know that there were a number of ancient civilizations by black people within Eden or Africa that have led to the ancient Egyptian civilizations. Basing on the philosophical hermeneutics and biblical exegesis, It is noted in Genesis chapter 2 verse 8 to 17 that God created man and put man in the Garden of Eden. Now, when we talk of the Garden of Eden, you realize I'm talking about the now African continent. Lola, James, and Tanya, among other scholars, have also noted that the most ancient hominid fossil is from Moroto. Now, Moroto is a town that is a few kilometers from where a skull considered as Morotopithecus or Ugandapithecus or Afropithecus, it was found in Uganda. This skull is the oldest available skull that predates 19 to 21 million years ago. Cheikh Anta Diop also notes that surely the quest for knowledge or education began from the tropical interior of Eden. Therefore, to avoid any further infinite regress to establish the beginning of the beginning, I have concluded with the biblical narrative that the beginning of the beginnings started from Eden, which is Africa. I have also observed that the ancient people from Eden, prior to ancient Egyptian civilization, they considered the consciousness that all possibility of existence is interconnected and interdependent. Therefore, no possibility of existence is actually isolated. Every possibility of existence is interrelated, and this is the foundation of the philosophy of Ubuntu. The philosophy of Ubuntu stems way before the ancient Egyptian civilization. The consciousness of the interconnectedness and interdependence of every possibility of existence only confirms that no possibility of existence is by random occurrence or circumstantial. It means every possibility of existence is based on order of existence, or what we can now refer to as the existential system framework. The ancient quest for existential knowledge was not limited to the possibility that makes sense to physical sense. It means the philosophy of Ubuntu is not only limited to the interconnectedness and interdependence of what makes sense to physical sense. It is beyond the physical truth, the physical knowledge, and the physical reality. Therefore, the interconnectedness and interdependence of every possibility of existence beyond what is visible by physical senses formed the foundation of the ancient Egyptian black education system. Now, whenever you find Kemetic education system, it means black education system. The system is not black, but it was the education system of the black people before the white man came to explore the continent of Eden. A plethora of scholars have showed us that many immigrants into ancient Egypt included all neighboring territories of ancient Egypt: the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, the Babylonians, and later on the Romans, all these people, one after another, they were schooled and educated in Egyptian temples. And why is it that all these neighboring territories came to Egypt to study? Because it was the most ancient civilized and epitome of civilization. Even the education system was called Kemetic education system or curriculum or the syllabus. The ancient Greek invasion and conquest of the ancient Egyptian civilization happened around 332 BC. And when the Greeks, among other people, the Medes and Persia, first it was the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, then the Greeks, subsequently went on conquering ancient Egypt because they had stayed in Africa or in Egypt. They had got involved in business, in education. There was a lot of intermarriage. Therefore, before the invasion of ancient Greeks to ancient Egypt, the people were predominantly black-skinned. And these are the people who initiated the quest for knowledge from Eden. But when the ancient Greeks conquered Egypt, it led to the change of government structures, to the change of national language, to the change of worship, social structures, education systems. But worse still, the conquerors, meaning the ancient Greeks, they published the available knowledge of the Egyptians into own languages. Why did they have to do this? Logically, they needed their people to also be able to read this knowledge and become wise, which was good. But something behind which was concealed was that this was a conquest that they wanted to be the authors of education, so that until now the philosophy of education is considered to have started with Greeks, yet they simply translated the previous knowledge of previous Kemetic education system into Greek. True, they added on more, basing on their reasoning, but worse still, later on, whatever knowledge that was not sensible, it was because it was not verifiable and justifiable by physical senses, was later on abolished, abandoned, and banished. And this led to the burning of the Library of Alexandria in ancient Egypt. All this conquest led to knowledge that was not physical to be lost forever. We can now say that the principle of Ubuntu is about the interconnectedness and interdependence of every possibility of existence. But the Greeks considered only the possibility of existence that is verifiable by the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and skin as the basis of education. Therefore, logically, the philosophical quest for knowledge never commenced with ancient Greeks, because they were also educated into prior Kemetic education system. But they refused the knowledge that was not verifiable by physical senses and considered such education as mystery education system. So whenever you study the ancient books and you find a mystery education system, it was not a mystery to the ancient black people of Eden, of Africa. It was only a mystery to the Greeks because no one has even ever completed the education system of ancient Egypt. It was 40 years, but nobody made even 25 years. When you look at the principle of Ubuntu, there was a man called Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard comes in the 18th century, and also looking at the circumstances of own experiences, he considers his life as uneventful. Why? He is born by a maid. He is born out of wedlock. His parents died when he was young. He had problems at university. He was segregated because he was from a low class compared to other scholars, until a moment where he came sick unto death. Therefore, Kierkegaard pondered the essence of own existence, and he concluded with the theory of existentialism. He thus noted that every person is free and responsible for the experience of own existence based on own free will choices. Kierkegaard realized that his life is not predetermined, but it is based on the choices that he was born into and the choices he himself made. Sartre in 1946 also agreed with Soren and also noted that true existence precedes essence. Therefore, existence manifests itself in the choice of actions, anxiety, and freedom of the will. Both Soren Kierkegaard and Sartre, they agree that whatever that takes place that we see is a result of our own choices and our own freedom to make choices. Therefore, whatever we see, if you look into your individual life, you will realize that whatever you are going through, you have been part of making those choices. However, Kierkegaard did not realize that free will or freedom is not limited to individual persons, but all species actually are free and they can make choices. As well, Kierkegaard did not realize that what he was actually explaining is Ubuntu. He was actually saying that we are free to cause, process physical and non-physical outcomes from which to gain the experience of existence. Therefore, the theory of existentialism and the philosophy of Ubuntu are saying the same thing, that the nature of existence is a system. And if the nature of existence is a system, then me and you and all other species, whatsoever we go through is not by coincidence, but we create the physical outcome and the non-physical outcome. As well, the wise man in Ecclesiastes 1 4 to 7, I quote, "The Bible says, 'One generation passeth away, and another generation come, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, hasteth to the place where he arose. The wind goes towards the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth according to his circuits. All rivers return into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return." What was Ecclesiastes really trying to say? Therefore, a critical review presents that no possibility of existence is by coincidence, but every possibility of existence is based on order of existence. Therefore, the framework of existence is based on an ecosystem. Remember, we are still exploring the wonder and the logical skepticism of education in Uganda. What are we really studying? Is what we are studying limited to what makes sense to only physical senses? Is the reality limited to physical reality? What is the significance of our education system? Now that we have established that the framework of existence is an existential system, I want to connect this so that you understand what I am studying at PhD level. I told you in the beginning that I am studying the existential system, the forms of inquiry, and the perspectives of knowledge in Uganda. We now appreciate that the nature of existence is an existential system. So if the nature of existence is an existential system, is reality limited to physical reality? If that which we are studying now in Uganda is limited to the physical reality, a system cannot have only one existential system component. Therefore, physical reality is only one of the existential system components, or the physical reality is only one of the components of the nature of existence. Let me explain it this way. Ecclesiastes tells us that everything, including the sun, the generations, the wind, the water, is continuously moving in its cycles. But our education system is only studying that which makes sense to physical sense, so as to gain empirical knowledge of arts and sciences. The ignorance or the unconsciousness of other possibility of reality does not mean that such possibility of existence does not exist. Therefore, the possibility of existence is not limited to mine and your consciousness. No, it is mine and your consciousness that is trying to study that which is now verifiable and justifiable by physical senses. Therefore, today, globally, not only in Uganda, individual persons, academic institutions, research organizations, the think tanks we talk of and we think they are great, even the United Nations we are proud of, they are doing research about the possibility of existence which only makes sense to physical sense. And they are looking at establishing mitigation and remedial measures to consider the physical problem, including threats, challenge, and risks which only can be quantified and verifiable by physical senses. We have now established that the nature of existence is an existential system. So, studying only the physical knowledge is only a smaller portion of the nature of existence. The now quest for knowledge. When we are looking at the knowledge of arts and sciences, we are basically looking at the possibility of existence which makes sense to physical senses. Therefore, the interconnectedness and interdependence of every possibility of existence has been narrowed down from the existential system to the physical reality. The Greeks have done us a disservice that when they refused the Kemetic education system that was based on all existential system component and considered such knowledge as a mystery education system, they only limited the fathomable reality to physical reality. And basing on existentialism, free will is not limited to individual person, but all species. What am I saying? All species are in the process of creating, causing, and processing both physical and non-physical outcomes, from which is the experience of existence. The experience of existence is both physical and non-physical. But sadly, since 332 until now, the quest for knowledge has remained constrained to physical verifiability and justifiability of truth. So, the education system, the education curriculum, the education syllabus, the academic subjects we are now studying, it is only limited to possibility of physical outcomes that make sense to physical sense. But these are physical outcomes of our own free will, the free will of faunas, flora, the free will of aquatic animals and other species. This is an incongruent inconsistency. The education that we are studying now is only limited to physical possibility because the Greeks refuted the ancient Egyptian-based Kemetic education system, and they considered the knowledge that is not verifiable by physical senses as a mystery education system. This is a great absurdity. It pains me that until now, even in Uganda, our education system is limited to physical possibility. Yet, from the interior of Eden, from the interior of Alkebulan, we are the roots of the ancient civilizations along the river Nile. What we are studying about the contribution of ancient Egypt is just the and final quest for knowledge which started from the interior of Eden. This has led me to design the existential system model based on the nature of existence. I wish that now we study this and appreciate the problem, why I am wondering and I'm doing a logical skepticism of education in Uganda. Allow me to explain that I am not looking at the Uganda education system, but I'm looking at education based in Uganda, which is the foundation of Eden, where the civilization along River Nile stems from Uganda. We may look and think that the black people have no contribution to ancient civilization, but without the black people, there would be no education, because they looked at the possibility of existence as the philosophy of Ubuntu and said all the species that exists have free will. They are causing, they are processing physical and non-physical outcomes. None of this existential system component is of more importance than the other. They are all one. The nature of existence is one. But the Greeks have closed our quest for knowledge to only physical outcomes. Therefore, the nature of existence is never limited to existential physical outcomes, but it is based on all the existential system components of the nature of existence. Whenever I talk about the nature of existence, I want you to understand I am talking about the possibility of every species to be able to cause, process physical and non-physical outcome. But the ancient Greeks, because they were interested in materialism and physical resources, have constrained our education system to quest of only physical truth, physical reality. Therefore, the knowledge we are studying is limited to arts and science, which is only knowledge of physical outcomes. I want to tell you that the possibility of existential causation is based on causal sense. Free will is based on causal sense. The form of inquiry for causing whatever we see is different from the form of inquiry for seeing what we have caused, which is physical, and what we are causing, which is non-physical. Therefore, the possibility of existence is not circumstantial, is not by coincidence, but it is based on order of existence. I want to thank the great scientists who have written and tried to explore and explain whatever possibly is in existence. I want to thank the global world academies of sciences. the Uganda National Academy of Sciences, the great scientists who have tried to study every possibility of existence. But I want you to know that yes, although we've studied that, we are only studied physical outcomes. Let me repeat this. Based on the existential system model, the existential forms of inquiry for the respective existential system component for causing, processing of physical and non-physical outcome is never uniform, is never competing, but is complementary. Therefore, the now existential problem with education is this: knowing that the nature of existence is an existential system based on complementary existential system components, it is a great absurdity that the quest for knowledge regarding every possibility of existence has remained limited to physical senses. So we are only studying physical outcome, yet it is the continuous unconscious outcome of our own causing and processing, yet we are oblivious of the non-physical metaphysical outcomes. Remember, we are studying the wonder and logical skepticism of education in Uganda. This simply means that the belief in scientism, science, and the scientific inquiry, and any validity of consistency as long as it's based on physical senses, we are only studying about physical outcome. And therefore, the study of physical truth and physical outcomes is only a maximum of a quarter of the existential truth. What does it mean? Whatever we've studied is okay, but it is a maximum of a quarter to the existential truth. We can continue to study science and arts, but that can only yield to a quarter of existential knowledge. Therefore, basing on the nature of existence, the physical truth, the empirical knowledge, and the physical reality is only of the existential system component of physical outcome. Therefore, the existential problem of education is we are only studying the physical outcome of our own continuous causation and processing, yet oblivious of metaphysical outcomes. It is for this reason that the considered reality, knowledge, identity, truth, normal, good, God, the academic subjects, the presence, the essence, and the experience of existence which we have studied and what we know is still limited to the physical possibility verifiable by physical senses. But reality is never limited to physical reality. Knowledge is never limited to physical knowledge. My identity and your identity is not only physical. That which we call as truth, it is because the measure of truth is limited to physical senses. That which we consider as normal, it is because that's what our eyes and ears see regularly. When we talk about God, we are still talking about the physical God. It is a great absurdity that until now, unconsciousness of other existential system component does not mean that such possibility does not exist. It is only that the ancient Greek scholars considered the knowledge of other existential system components as a mystery education system. This was not a mystery to ancient Eden people, to ancient African people. African people have had this knowledge, but the white man thought this is spiritualism. No. This is knowledge that was left out when the ancient Greeks conquered ancient Egyptians and burnt the literature that was, yet they published that which they could understand as Greek knowledge. It pains me that until now, the philosophical quest for knowledge looks at Socrates, looks at Plato, Aristotle, and what they wrote. Let me now open your eyes that these boys were educated from ancient Egypt. What is considered as Greek philosophy is actually a translation of ancient African philosophies that they considered the possibility of existence as interconnected, and all of it only makes sense when everything is approached as one. Therefore, the now possibility of physical reality is only the possibility that has been caused, but we are continuously causing more physical possibility. That's why I say that what we have now only covered as based on our physical senses is only less than 0.1 of the possibility of physical reality. We have not explored the physical possibility fully because other physical possibility is yet under consideration to be caused. Therefore, the now physical reality is not the only possibility of physical outcome, but that is what has been caused. Yet, we are causing, we are processing physical and non-physical outcome. Astutely, we can continue looking at ways to solve physical problems, but if you are bright, now you are able to appreciate that the physical problem is among the physical outcome we are causing. It means, why do we keep looking for solutions to the problems we are continually causing? Why can't we look at studying another dimension of existence, which is conscious causation? It is for this reason that the education system, curriculum, and syllabus, not only in Uganda, it is still based on quest for knowledge and computing of physical outcomes. Because that's what anyway the physical senses can see. But also, that is what the Greeks considered as knowledge. Let me tell this at this moment. It pains me that until now, the global education system, even in Uganda, the source of the Kemetic education system, the quest for knowledge has remained limited to physical senses. Look at the subjects we are studying. physics, chemistry, biology, geography. It is because this is what the physical senses or the somatosense can see and make sense. But every existential system component, it has respective academic subjects. Let me say this. The academic subjects for existential causation are different from the academic subjects for existential processing, and is different from the academic subjects for physical outcome and non-physical outcome. I have already said that the sensory capability or the form of inquiry for the respective existential system component is not uniform, is not competing, but is complementary. Therefore, the possibility of knowledge based on the nature of existence is what we call as existential knowledge. But empirical knowledge is only of existential physical outcomes. I want to say that empirical knowledge of arts and science, however good it is only 0.25 closer to existential truth. Let me also note that the physical reality is never the only reality about the nature of existence, but it is the possibility of existence that makes sense to physical senses or the somatosense form of inquiry. The possibility of existential knowledge, now that we have understood that it is based on all existential system components, it is a great mishappening that the praised ancient Greek philosophers considered the quest for knowledge, which is not verifiable by physical senses, as a mystery education system. It is thus the basis of this study, as I am exploring the existential system, the forms of inquiry, and the perspectives of knowledge in Uganda, that I am trying to dig back to rediscover the abolished and banished mystery education system. If we continue looking and praising the Greeks, it means we will continually remain in the darkness of ignorance of even our own identity. The Greeks, they banished the Kemetic education system, which was based on existential knowledge, because they could not comprehend the existential forms of inquiry of the nature of existence. Let me tell you this. No matter the physical wonders and the hopes and the promise of artificial intelligence, it has given us computers and robotics and all this computing, the mobile phones, the satellites, the whatever we do. Thank God that we've been able to do that. But all this is only intelligence of physical outcome. Each existential system component has own intelligence, and none is uniform and competing but complementary. Therefore, even the logically considered physical problem actually is own continuous causation and processing of our own free will. Let me say this. We have seen the world at war. We have seen civil wars, religious wars, geopolitical wars. Now we have wars going on between the European countries. We have seen extreme weather where fires are burning forests as water is wiping away other parts of the planet. I have seen people frustrated to the brim. I have seen people asking fundamental philosophical questions, including, why this? Why me? Who am I? These are fundamental philosophical questions, but the ancient Greeks lost the Kemetic education system. We can no longer base on the knowledge of arts and science to explain the possibility of existence as limited to physical reality. And allow me to say that basing on the nature of existence as an existential system, the empirical knowledge of arts and science, it is only limited to physical outcome. Therefore, if we are wise enough, if we are astute enough, it is never capable even to solve the existential problems, but it is only limited to see that which has been caused and also realizing the physical problems, the physical threats and risks. But the physical problems that even the United Nations, research organizations, academic institutions, and other think tanks, they are focused to solve, these are already physical problems which have already been caused and processed by our own free will. Yet, the problems of metaphysical outcome, they are also with us as I'm talking now. Let me tell you this. We are talking of climate change, but the greatest climate that is changing is not physical, it is in the mind. Despite having the identity of free will, the causing entity is never free from the consequences of own causation, whether conscious or not. The consequences of our own unconscious causing, it affects more than the causing entity, and it goes beyond the lifespan of the causing entity. Therefore, basing on existentialism, even the considered rights, we need to critique. Not all rights are actually right. The rights are either for causing well-being within physical outcomes or wellness within non-physical outcome. But we are seeing that rights, it is also our right to cause self-autodestruction. So let us not cry of the Ebola, of the global pandemics, including COVID. We are seeing more diseases are emerging because we are causing more. I want us to appreciate the consciousness of the difference between having rights. Many of the rights are not actually human rights because they are not humane. Many of these rights are body or are rights of the physical flesh, but they are not rights of humanity. But because our form of inquiry has been limited to physical senses, we have continued to solve physical problems and calling physical rights as human rights. Any right that is leading to my destruction is not humane. It is for this reason, as I wind up, that it is my realization that since the Greek invasion of ancient Egypt, that is 332 BC, there has been no philosopher, no theologian who has expressly expressed himself and realized and explored the nature of existence as an existential system. And this is right so because the nature of existence as an existential system is a kinetic mystery education system. It is thus the Greeks abolished such knowledge because they could not comprehend it by the time. I still wonder, the Greeks have used education to conquer the entire world. Even the education system we study now in Uganda is Greek founded because it is limited to physical possibility. It also pains me that even when the Romans conquered the ancient Greeks, they also realized that for them to control the entire world, they are going to form a religion and call it Roman Catholic, and they even considered it as a church. This is what happened, that the Romans have desired to live forever, and therefore, in the name of God, they have established a religion that is having Romans who are Ugandan, Romans who are East Africans, Roman Catholics who are Africans, Roman Catholics who are Europeans, Roman Catholic who are South Americans. When did we have Romans everywhere in the entire world? Friends, this must stop. We must disease it from our own ego as man to consider it as the knowledge of God. God is not a physical possibility, but God is the presence of the possibility of existence based on the nature of existence. Let me explain it this. Look at bullet number 2. The ignorance of the existential system components of the nature of existence is the basis why idolatry and symbolism have come in the church. Look at the form of veneration, reverence, and worship. We figuratively consider the physical imagery of God as the basis of worship. Whatever we cannot understand, whatever does not make a sense to physical sense, we have come up with a physical imagery. Yet, that which is God is the presence of the possibility of existence based on the 4 existential system components. The 4 existential system components are existential causation, existential process, existential physical outcome, and existential metaphysical outcome. And that is the nature of existence, or that is God. Sorry. Therefore, there is no possibility of existence that the nature of existence or God is unaware. Let me repeat it. There is nothing that we shall ever cause and process as a physical and non-physical outcome that God is not aware, because even the possibility of existence that we see as physical is only the physical viewpoint of the nature of existence, but it is not the only possibility of existence. The identity of all existential system users, including man, birds, reptiles, trees, birds, even the species we cannot see now. The identity of all these species is founded on the nature of existence. What does it mean? Let me make it simpler. Looking at me as Chiyingi Martin, I have capability for existential causation. I have identity for existential processing. I have identity for physical outcome. And I have an identity for metaphysical outcome. It means I am in the imagery of the nature of existence of God. This is deep, but it is the ancient mystery Kemetic education system. I want to say, all species that we talk about, they are in the image of the nature of existence of God. Therefore, it goes without saying that the scope of knowledge must move beyond the quest for only physical truth into the quest for the nature of existence of God. We need to gradually grow up and quest for the knowledge of our identity based on all existential system components. Let me show you something, the wonder of physical problems. It remains a wonder and great stupidity that until now, man is conducting research into high precision and lethal military weapons of mass destruction. But have you ever wondered, these are for defending who from who? Logically, we are making weapons of shooting our own species and demolishing the physical infrastructure. Look at the war in Ukraine, the war which is by Russia and Ukraine. Why are we really fighting? Look at what we are doing. We are only devising means of our own self-destruction. So, we have gone actually mad. I say man is gone mad. In what way? He's looking for better ways to kill himself. Number two, we are therefore lost in the quest for liberty, security, peace, freedom. But to be free from what? Who is against us? Let us ask a fundamental question. Who is causing the insecurity that we want to gain liberty from? Is that which causes the insecurity, is it a physical possibility? Now, if it is not a physical possibility, can aggression actually ever resolve insecurity? Now, let us use logic. Why don't we eliminate the first cause of insecurity? And surely it makes great sense that if you eliminate the first cause of insecurity, who is man? The rest of the species will be happy. But the rest of the species don't want man to be eliminated. It is therefore the sole duty of this PhD research that I intend to build mechanisms of growing beyond logical reasoning, because logical reasoning is only limited to what makes sense to physical sense. I need to study the Kemetic mystery education system and allow man to appreciate that he is his own greatest existential threat. Therefore, when man is talking about climate change, I need man to appreciate that it is also as well logically insane to believe that the climate must remain static. The climate has to change, but is the change happening randomly? Is the change coincidental? No. I now tell you this based on the Kemetic mystery education system, that the physical climate change is only the physical outcome of the mind climate change. By us solving the physical climate change, we will never succeed, because the nature of free will in our mind is becoming malevolent and virulent. Therefore, all our experience of existence is causing more evil internally. The problem is not the change of climate. The problem is the direction of change of climate. These are two things. Climate will always change, but the problem now is that the direction is more destructive than creating more well-being. Our education system now, we are still looking at mitigation of the caused change, but we have not looked at mitigation of the cause of the change. The Greeks have locked the global education system to quest of arts and science. This is a great misnomer that the Greeks did obliviously of the nature of existence. I want to tell you, even the global pandemics of HIV, COVID, and others, they are still emerging because the causal sense is functional, yet it is becoming malevolent. Let me tell you this. Since the creation of Earth until 1844, the global population never exceeded 1.5 billion. But now, November 2022, it is almost averagely 200 years maximum. The global population has moved from 1.5 billion to 8 billion. It means in 200 years, we have increased globally by 6.5 billion. Thus, on average, we are adding 32.5 million people per year. But do you know what we are doing? What are we mitigating? Are we mitigating the cause, or we are mitigating the caused impact? Let me tell you this. The existential problems is interconnected and interdependent. This is what the ancient African people, the ancient people of Eden, of Al-Keblan, were trying to say, that when we talk of the philosophy of Ubuntu, everything is interrelated as the nature of existence. The mitigation of only physical problem is a futile global endeavor, but it is a notable phase of civilization. The knowledge of arts and science cannot help us. I ask you, come back to me. I am the Ancient of Days. I am as I am because I am of the Ancient of Days. The Ancient of Days is not about godliness. It is about a different identity within people that we can see that which is not physical. Let me say this. The wonder of physical problems is I am continually causing and processing more by my own free will. Let me repeat it. The wonder of physical problem is I, including you, we are continually causing and we are processing physical and non-physical outcome by our own free will. But the physical knowledge or the empirical knowledge of arts and science is surely asinine and is incapable of mitigation of this existential cyclic loop, but the nature of existence. I am simply telling you, come back. We at Uganda University, we want to explore this back to the roots, to correct what the Greeks have put up, what the Romans have instituted as the Roman Catholic Church. It is just blasphemy that we are only studying about the physical truth, but we have ignored the nature of existence. I thus conclude. I have written down 14 points that are fundamental to the subsequent research that we shall be doing at Uganda University in collaboration with any other scholar who may want to study with us in Uganda. Number 1. Now that the nature of existence is an existential system framework based on the order of existence, the knowledge of each existential system component is a respective perspective of existential knowledge, but based on respective existential forms of inquiry. Therefore, the sensory response to stimulus for the respective existential system component is never uniform, is not competing, but complementary. Number 2, the possibility of physical reality is not self-causation. I remember when I was studying my philosophy, all the ancient Greek philosophers said there are 4 fundamental elements of existential causation: fire, water, air, and land. No wonder the ancient Greeks could only understand the physical reality. I now say that the physical reality is the consequential physical outcome of own free will based on order of existence. Number 3, existential outcomes is both physical and metaphysical possibility of existence. and both are the consequential permutations and the combinatories of own continuous but now unconscious existential causation and existential processing. Logic is only limited to physical outcome. But when we shall be studying the knowledge of existential causation and other existential system components, we'll be looking at permutations and combinatories of the nature of existence. Number 4, the belief in scientism, science, scientific inquiry, and validity of existence as long as it is founded on physical senses, including the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. The consciousness will be always limited to physical outcomes, which is only a quarter of existential truth. Number 5. It is basing on such background that the considered reality, knowledge, identity, truth, normal, good, God, academic subjects, presence, essence, and experience of existence is never limited to physical outcome, but all the existential system components of the nature of existence of God. Number 6. The physical viewpoint of the nature of existence, which is God. The physical viewpoint of God is the considered empirical knowledge of arts and science based on existential physical outcomes. Because this is what the physical senses can actually verify and justify as truth. Number 7. The nature of free will within the nature of desire is the foundation of the nature of being, but the latter is never the only existential outcome. What am I saying? The latter, which is the nature of being, is only possibility of physical outcome, is never the only existential outcome, but as well we shall realize we have the nature of worth of existence. The existential form of inquiry for the nature of being based on physical outcome and the nature of desire basing on existential causation is never uniform and competing but complementary. Number 8. The physical problem that individual persons, academic institutions, the research organizations, the global think tanks, even the great United Nations, we are focused to mitigate and resolve is only the physical in per se, which is verifiable by physical senses. Therefore, we are focused at solving physical problem, but the existential entity which is in quest for mitigation of physical problem is the same which is continuously, unconsciously causing and processing more physical outcome by own nature of free will. Number 9. Looking at things from different sides. That's what I mean by perspicaciously. The future of you and me is founded on the nature of free will we do today. There is no possibility of existence which is by random occurrence, but all possibility of existence is based on order of existence. Number 10. Within the possibility of physical reality, nothing is brought into nor withdrawn, but only the experiences of existence while in such a possibility of existence. That's why I urge you to grow into consciousness of existential causation, because every possibility of free will influence the possibility and the experience of existence. Number 11. The nature of existence of God is an eternal ecosystem. Let me explain it briefly. Remember, in the beginning I said, when I was looking at infinitely grace to establish the beginning of existence, I simply said I have only adopted the biblical write-up that and God decided to put man in the Garden of Eden, which is Africa. And why did he decide so? We will study this, but it means before even the existence of Eden was, existence already pre-existed. And by any coincidence, if the world or earth comes to an end, it does not mean that existence will stop. No. Your birth and your death is only your opportunity to see a little, but existence pre-existed and will eternally exist even when you are no more. Therefore, the nature of existence of God is eternity ecosystem.
It's 16 hours.
All existential system components for causing, for processing of physical and non-physical outcome, they are actually function. Therefore, all existential system users are having their identity of free will. What am I saying? All species which we can see and note have free will. Therefore, each is eternally engaged in computing of own experience of existence, either consciously or unconsciously. The possibility of existence, which is thus now considered as reality, knowledge, identity, truth, normal, good, God, rights, academic, subjects which we are studying now, and other dimensions of existence, is never only of physical possibility of existence, but all existential system components. Number 13, no possibility of funding for economic development is ever capable of resolving and mitigation of existential problems and later on physical problems. Let me say this. For us to solve our problems, it is never about money. Therefore, we will be studying, and money, yes, is important, but it has its role which is limited as a facilitating agent. No possibility of funding for economic development is ever capable of resolving and mitigation of existential problems, let alone physical problems. And why is it so? The existential problems are caused by our own identity, and they are caused by all existential system users. Yet, when we talk of physical problems, they are only the impasse which has already been caused and processed, but more is undergoing existential causation and processing. Therefore, funding will only actualize the nature of free will within the nature of desire. This may seem as difficult philosophy. I am simply trying to labor to introduce you to what the Greeks considered as the mystery education system. I want to conclude with number 14. The scope of quest for knowledge, the scope of trying to establish what exists regarding the possibility of existence is founded on the nature of existence, which is God. That which is God, when we say we are worshipping God, we are actually worshipping the nature of existence. That's why nothing happens which is outside the nature of existence. I want to invite you, we explore the ancient Greek abolished and banished black or Kemetic mystery education system. The black education system is not for black-skinned people. It is only that it is more ancient. Before, we were interested in our differences of color, in our differences of material prosperity, in our differences of authority. No, the black or the Kemetic education system, it was an education system based on all existential system component. It is against this background that in the beginning I told you that this is not an original research. I am just fortunate that I have been able to see way beyond thousands and millions of years, that I am able to witness and see great atrocities that the considered Greek wise people have caused in this world. I have seen the atrocities the Romans have caused and have considered that we will all one day become Romans by worshipping the God based on idolatry. Friends, this, I am not against any religion. I am not against any color, skin. I am not praising the black people. I am simply saying, come and know your identity. This is my recommendation. I need you to engage into existential orchestration based on the nature of existence. When we talk of existential orchestration, I want to lead as long as I'm alive to let you know that whatever you are going through, you have caused it, or your choice is part of your experiences. But as well, even if you choose or not, or you choose to, it will affect the experience of existence. The wonder and the logical skepticism of Uganda education system, curriculum, syllabus, and academic subjects, this is an ancient of days call. I am calling you to explore the nature of existence, because the nature of existence is not only a physical possibility, but there are other dimensions. Sorry for that. There are other dimensions of the nature of existence. When you study, we have kept and written this as the winds. When you study the Bible, you'll see the winds, the four winds. Whenever we talk of the four winds, I am talking about the nature of existence. I ask you to return to Eden, to rediscover the ancient banished Kemetic mystery curriculum. We are looking at the tree of life. That tree of life still flourishes from the interior of Eden. That which the nature of existence has established does not change. It is eternal. It is forever. Therefore, come, let us reason together. My name is Chiyinji Martin. The Black Kemetic Mystery Education System can still be relearned. We need to review our curriculum and syllabus. This mystery education system was never a mystery to the ancient black people before ancient Egypt. It was only not verifiable and justifiable by physical senses. Allow me to give you this. It will be the basis as we are studying the mystery education system. There was a woman who had a garden. She planted the best of the plants for her children. As time goes on, she assigned a cousin brother who needed assistance the role to be a caretaker of the garden. The cousin brother, with time, assumed the ownership of the garden. He thought he owns part of the garden, and he started to do as he pleased. When the owner of the garden realized what is happening, she got annoyed and chased out the cousin brother who had been brought to tender the garden. This lady who owned the garden, in her great nature of free will and the nature of nature, she continued to support the cousin brother, but out of the garden. They separated ways, but she never hated the cousin brother. Looking at this analogy, it is not just a story. It has happened here in Uganda. We shall study the nature of free will of the owner of the garden. We shall study the nature of the existential system users. We shall study the nature of nothingness, and we shall study the nature of desire within the garden. I want to ask, for the ancient path. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you'll find rest for your souls. We shall study the physical possibility of existence, but as well, from the garden, we shall be able to explore the knowledge of other existential system components. I want you to grow into the knowledge of your own identity within the nature of existence of God. I am Chiyinji Martin. I am exploring the existential system, the forms of inquiry, and the perspectives of knowledge in Uganda. Uganda is just an analogy. It can be any part of the world. This has been the wonder. This is a logical skepticism of education in Uganda. I thank you, and I thank you for even having time to join me as we study together. I want to believe, me and you, we can continue to explore other dimensions of our existence, but continuing the quest for physical truth can only give us a bare minimum of a quarter of existential truth. I thank you, and until then, thank you.